Good evening. Shit, forgot the first line. Good evening. Okay. Good evening. When you think of incredible filmmakers, who do you think of? Martin Scorsese, maybe Greta Gerwig, the OG Orson Welles, Spike Lee, maybe, or even QT, Quentin Tarantino. But who doesn't come to mind? Adam Sandler. And why is that? Because he really is a true artist, just like the rest of these people, and I think he's poorly represented in the media. There's such a hatred for him. It's sort of like a echodrome of hatred towards this man that modern audiences, that when they see him, they sort of just instantly write it off as terrible, it's just not fair. So I thought I would look into it, and when asking people what they thought of Adam Sandler, what they thought of the man, they often said, well, I hate his films, I despise the man, I hate his films. But everybody always has one film that they just absolutely love, which is very strange when you think about it. How can someone so universally hated give so many people joy at the same time? I sort of wanted to get to the bottom of this, why Sandman, if you will, the title of the video, or, more importantly, Jack and Jill, an in-depth analysis. But before we look at Jack and Jill, I think we should look at his earlier work, Seeing as Jack and Jill was the big turning point in his life, one of the last films released in cinemas as of 2020, I think we really need to understand the man before. We need to look at his career. He started with a few low-budget movies, playing minor roles like Bozo the Clown. But he had his first commercial success with Billy Madison, followed by Happy Gilmore, and with these two, he would set in place the Adam Sandler formula. The formula being, a bit of a loser guy, sort of bumbling through life, and then he's given this opportunity, and through it he learns a bit of respect for himself, and eventually he'll get the girl in the end, of course. And people often shame him for being lazy, People often shame him for being lazy for doing this, which is actually laughable when you consider directors who have a style and essentially do the exact same thing as him. Almost every Taika Waititi film is about a young boy with one or no parent who has to, through learning about the world, find where he fits in with it. Boy, The Hunt for the Wilder People, Jojo Rabbit. Even What We Do in the Shadows or Eagle vs. Shark to some extent are about this. And when he does it, he's considered a cinematic genius, a visionary director. Similarly with Wes Anderson, who typically uses the same sort of archetypal characters and sort of same style to get the exact same message across, is considered artistic, just one of the best directors out there. Which, when you put into perspective how people are treating Adam Sandler, it's ridiculous. It's abhorrent. It's disgusting, to say the least. I mean, can you shame someone for doing something? I mean, isn't the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? And I mean, isn't the point of being a filmmaker or actor is to find what works for you and express your story through your unique voice? In addition to this, it's not entirely true. Over the years, Adam Sandler has adapted to his age, as is true with the directors I've mentioned previously. While he started out playing man-children who overact, and he started to play more responsible characters who had outbursts very rarely, and the people around them were the strange ones. He was essentially playing the straight man in a comedy. We see this when we compare a film like Happy Gilmore to The Wedding Singer. While Robbie Hart does have one or two outbursts, it is nowhere near the amount of happies anger issues. I think the shift occurred in the film Anger Management, where he, pardon the pun, but he manages his anger. In the film, he plays a quiet man who Jack Nicholson suggests that he has a lot of built-up anger inside him, which is completely different to how Happy acts in the film, in Happy Gilmore. And this shy guy sort of becomes the norm, slowly, for a few movies. This era ends with Punk Drunk Love, after which he settles for a more confident man, and he uses this to parody the modern action hero in the Zohan, in which we see him starting to use visual storytelling. In a particular scene, hang on, let me see if I can find it. In this particular scene from the Zohan, hang on, let me pull it back. He says, "I can do this." This is the scene where he goes from one side of the two streets in New York. One side is the Israeli side, and the other side is the Palestine side. Obviously, a metaphor for the actual situation in Israel. But if you look at, he dances as he crosses the street, and if you can look here, so he dances into the middle, then he pauses, and look at this here. He thrusts towards the Israeli side, saying, "I love you guys. I love you guys." And then he stops, teetering the line of the two. It's like he's walking a tightrope. He's losing his balance a little, and then, you know, there's approval from both sides. And then finally, he walks in. Now, obviously, that's very metaphorical, very beautifully shot. In fact, you know, if you look at all the greys and the yellows of the taxi, it's superb lighting, superb cinematography. You know, it's just terrific stuff. But I think at its core, it's beautiful visual storytelling. As you can see here, it's New York, the melting pot of America, of cultures, of different cultures. They're just all coming together and sort of meeting and living together in harmony. And I guess that's the message of the movie, you know. In addition to this, the film has a terrific soundtrack. I think the line "disco disco good good" is in reference to this. It's like the characters are saying to the audience, please look out for the soundtrack, which in itself is what good directors should do. Utilize each and every aspect to get a message across to the audience. But too often this message is lost. And we see this with not only Adam, but also Bong Joon-ho. His film Okja, at its core, is about consumerism and the effect on us and our society. But the film is often mistaken for a pro-veganist message, sort of focusing on the poor treatment of animals. But no artist is more misrepresented than Adam Sandler. And I think Jack and Jill was a cry for help. But we missed it. And Adam, as Adam says, sometimes I use my films to pay for a holiday. Audiences know he's not 100% in it for the message. But is that what he wanted? Because when you watch Jack and Jill with that in mind, it totally makes sense. Jack and Jill, at its core, is a film about his career. Jack and Jill representing the two sides of one coin, that is Adam Sandler. And Adam Sandler asks the audience to take themselves out of the world of the film and think critically. See it not as a film to enjoy, but as a film to think about. He does this by starting the film with a fake documentary about twins. This direct address reminds the audience that they are watching a movie. And after this sequence, a home movie of their life, of the two characters' life, is played. It shows them growing up in harmony, and it is shot to look like an old 8mm camera. Again, getting people to pull themselves out of the movie. Often when a filmmaker casts one actor as two characters, it's for a reason. To suggest that the two represent one person, they represent the duality of man or woman. So, why did people claim Adam was being lazy? If Martin Scorsese were to do this with Robert De Niro, for example, people would still be talking about the film today, and talk about its deep meaning. But I digress. The hypocrisy of modern critics is not what we're talking about. I want to talk about how Jack represents the commercial aspect of Adam, and Jill represents the comical aspect of Adam. It's established, as I said, during the opening, when the audience sees their childhood, the two live in harmony. But as time goes on, Jack and Jill drift apart. And that's where this movie takes place. At the start, and that's where his career is at the start of this movie. Both Adam Sandler and Jack. He's more focused on the commercial side and has almost forgotten the comical aspect. But let's get into those characters a little more. Jill's bird, Poopsie, for example, represents the fact that his comedy can sometimes be annoying and repetitious at times. But even still, you love that bird so much. And I think that the homeless man, who is from Happy Gilmore, by the way, it's the same character in the movie. In both movies, that's the same character, the same actor, the same costume, but, you know, him trying to eat Poopsie maybe suggests that Adam feels his comedic career is on its last legs. Or so at least it feels that way to him. It feels like his comedic talent is about to be eaten by a homeless man in the woods. Even little things in the movie, like the sweat patches in Jill's bed, suggest that she is overworked, which, you know, really tells the audience that it's hard doing comedy. Adam admits it. But no one really likes Jack when you think about it. Jack is the head of an ad agency. The man literally sells ads to his world is money, and Jill, she isn't as well-to-do. The two haven't seen each other in ages, and similarly, his movies around this time weren't as funny. They were more cash grabs. It's almost as if Jack has taken over, and Jill, who he hates by the way, is trying to claw her way back to the top. Another thing of note is that the hatred Jack feels to Jill isn't shared by any of the other characters. His wife and family love Jill. His work friends too. And most notably, Al Pacino is infatuated with Jill. But before we talk about Al, we should talk about the rest of the cast. Who plays Adam's wife? Katie Holmes. She was married to Tom Cruise and apparently was only allowed to be in movies approved by the Church of Scientology. The Church of Scientology is often regarded as a front for money-making, sort of. So therefore, it would make sense that the church would approve for a film that would make a lot of money. Knowing this, Adam Sandler casts her. A major plotline in the film is Jill trying to find a boyfriend, a mate, someone to spend the rest of her days with. And one of the men she dates is Norm Macdonald, played by Norm Macdonald. Norm is an old friend of Adam's in real life. He was in Billy Madison, his first commercial success, and widely regarded as one of his funniest films. However, Jack intervenes before the date and makes Norm scared. And then on the date, Jill further scares Norm. Is this a subtle nod to the fact that Adam's friends are complaining that the films just aren't as funny anymore, as the commercial aspect has gotten in the way too much? Another casting choice to take note is that Rob Schneider is not in the film. Keep this in mind when we talk about Sandy Wexler. In fact, no. He wasn't in a lot of his films at this time. He wasn't in Pixels. It's very strange, to say the least. Maybe they had a falling out. So is it so far-fetched that the comedic actor, Rob Schneider, was worried about his friend, Adam, who was only concerned about the bottom line, the cash at the end? I don't know. Something to think about. But big Hollywood name actor Al Pacino is in the film. Al Pacino sort of plays the big thing that, Adam Sandler's character has to secure. A typical storyline. But Al Pacino, a well-known actor, wants nothing to do with Jack, the commercial side of Adam. He loves Jill, the comical side. This could be commenting on the claim that people like Steve Buscemi or Jack Nicholson only choose to be in his films for economic gain. No. This suggests that they're in it for fun and for the laughs. They're in it for the funnies, This is also compounded by the birthday scene. In it, Jack and Jill are having a party. All of Jack's celebrity clients love Jill, and it's suggested they're only there because they work with Jack. Another thing to note is that Jill complains about there only being one cake. It's sort of like Jack is taking credit for all the work that they've done together. Of course, though, throughout the film, Jack learns that he needs Jill. He wants to get these high-class actors like Al, and he needs Jill to do that. And that is seen through Jack disguising himself as Jill. He learns that he can't do it himself. He learns that he needs Jill, and he says that out loud. He says, "I need Jill," as he's running across, Al Pacino's boat back to the helicopter. And the only way that he can be happy is for them to live in harmony. In the final film, the racist Mexican stereotype shows up and confesses his love for Jill. Now, this character is not just the chimichangas, let me tell you. No, this character represents Rob Schneider, who often plays racist stereotypes. He misses his good friend, Rob. Adam misses his good friend, Rob. And he wants to make movies with Rob forever. And he is not just kidding. So that's Jack and Jill. But Sandy Wexler was made in response to that, I think. It was his first Netflix movie, and the world was waiting in awe at what would he do next. Will this become the norm? And yes, of course, it would later become the norm. So, as Adam stands at this crossroad in his career, he takes the opportunity to comment on his life and sort of what he's worked on. A look back, if you will. Like The Irishman. The film is set in the 90s, the decade that made him who he is. It's about a man who was directly inspired by his manager. Again, someone who made him exactly who he is today. This film takes heavy inspiration from the film Broadway Denny Rose, which was directed by Woody Allen. Both being Jewish comedic filmmakers from New York, I think that Adam obviously has some love for the director. And of course, he wants to pay homage to that in this film. And most noticeably though, spoiler alert, Rob Schneider does show up as a typical racial stereotype once again. it's sort of like the two are back together at last, reunited, and you know, it feels so good, reunited at last. And I guess at its core, that's what we want from the people. And it's such a shame that critics didn't pick up on this. You know, it's so sad that critics didn't see the movie and see it for what it was, a love letter to his good friend Rob Schneider. But you know, sometimes you can't see the full picture till you're all the way zoomed out. Thanks for watching.